Well, well, well. What have we here? Brave new visitors?
Hello, internees. I'd just like to take a moment to go over the good and the not so good of the situation we all find ourselves in, really. Now, I must admit that in these very, very trying times, like most people, I'm sort of addicted to the news, and I've really been trying to make an effort not to read the tabloid British newspapers like the Daily Mail and the Daily Excess. I was only ever tempted to read those when I was in a pub for a couple of beers anyway, and that has all been taken away from me now. But also, I must admit that although I'm a US citizen, in these very, very trying times, I tend to go back to British news and the news of what's happening back in Britain. In some ways, I think it's less scary than what's happening in the States. Like, our death figures in the States are just absolutely and utterly horrendous. Bad enough in Britain, but they're not that bad, if you see what I mean. And I'd just like to go through some of the good things that have happened. We've seen our national health workers doing extraordinary acts of courage and extraordinary levels of hard work. I'm not going to say we've seen our politicians working tirelessly or working every hour that God gives to blah, 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 like providing PPE to hospitals, which they're obviously not. If I think I said in one of my earlier posts today, if I see or hear another government lackey saying, I'm working around the clock, it's a load of absolute bollocks. Why can't the government just be honest with people and say they were caught behind the eight ball with the PPE? They didn't have enough. They didn't anticipate what was going to happen, and they didn't order enough, instead of not answering the question and continuously saying, we're working around the clock to get our fine national health workers PPE. We've seen incredible acts of kindness and support, like everyone coming out of their homes and applauding the NHS workers. And one of the finest examples of the kindness of people was encapsulated with Captain Tom, a World War II veteran of 99 years of age, who tried to raise £1,000 by walking up and down his garden 100 times, I think it was. He ended up raising more than £20 million for the NHS. How's about that? Those are just a few that are on the top of my mental list, but I'm sure there are many, many more. But on the other hand, there are some devastatingly awful stories of the other side of human nature. Let's go through a few. One of the first things to rear its ugly head was panic buying. You remember that? Some idiot somewhere in the world decided that they had to buy up all the toilet rolls, and everyone else followed suit. That led to scenes like this. Now, what kind of unmentionable, indescribable idiot would walk around like this thinking it's a good idea? And of course, that led to scenes like this. Old people desperately searching empty shelves for scraps of food to eat that had been left over by the locusts. And of course the crooks were pretty quick off the mark, inventing scams once again to rook vulnerable old people, mentally insecure people out of money. And you have to wonder about the mental condition of some scum that would steal the motorbike of a health worker while he or she is inside treating coronavirus cases. Or wonder at the stupidity of this police officer who fined an ambulance worker for stopping and picking up the patient. But for sheer stupidity of officialdom, this one has surely got to take the biscuit. They're supposedly flying in workers from Europe to pick fruit in England, bringing in God knows what infection with them, when our own people are just busting for an excuse to go out and do something useful. It just beggars belief. And now we come to what for me is probably the most distressing and repugnant of all, the people that somehow or other think it's a great idea to spit at people in this time of a highly infectious disease. Like this charmer here, he thought it was a good idea to start coughing and spitting at police because they were trying to ask him a few questions. Well, it looks like they took him back to the station and they had a full and frank exchange of views, and I hope the scumbag goes away for a long, long time. Another case in the press here. Same thing. There must be some deeply, deeply disturbed, nasty human beings around. You're not even safe if you're a mortuary attendant dealing with the dead. I think this was all due to a restricted number of mourners being allowed at a funeral, but someone got victimised for it and spat at. Can you imagine the thought processes that go on in these people's minds? So the opinions that are expressed in this short film are my opinions. They might be wrong, but they're mine. So sorry if you disagree with them. If you happen to think it's a good idea to spit at people, to steal from hospital workers, and to strip the shelves of supermarkets so that old people can't buy halfpence worth of food to live on, well, that's your opinion and you're entitled to them. But this whole thing just makes me ask the question,
what have we become here on Brutal Planet?